Greetings, my dear friends, and welcome to another episode of Reading Epic Threads. I'm your host, Patrick Gummel, joining you from Spring, Texas, this November 29th, 2024 at 9:15 a.m. Central Standard Time. I have one piece for you today from the illustrious Joe Lange at badlands.substack.com. But before I get started, I want to remind every single one of you that today is Black Friday, and that today, through Monday at midnight, everything at our websites, tulipblooms.shop and epicminerals.net, will indeed be buy one, get one half off on every single one of our products. It is an extravaganza for Black Friday. Get it while it's hot. Tulipblooms.shop has the best lotions the world has ever known, consisting of a soothing aloe base and food-grade plant oils. This makes age spots fade. This makes sun damage disappear. This cures sunburns. It makes dead skin tumble away without a trace of abrasion. There's nothing like the incredible rainfall, and you can get it in all sorts of essential oil blends. You can get it at tulipblooms.shop. For Black Friday, use promo code Shapiro for an additional 10% off. Buy one, get one half off. Today only through Monday at midnight. It is Black Friday. Take advantage. There are gift baskets that will blow your mind. You can get them gift wrapped and sent to your loved ones. Nothing says I love you and Merry Christmas like the gift of skincare and great health. With that, let us begin. From badlands.substack.com, Infiltration, Not Invasion, Propaganda and Lies, by Joe Lange. This feature is a follow-up to A Dereliction of Duty. Benghazi was at the center of everything happening in the Middle East during the Obama administration. By overthrowing Gaddafi, the Obama administration had created a safe haven for al-Qaeda. Training camps in Libya and Benghazi became a pipeline for Islamic terrorists who we were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. It was also a pipeline for Islamic terrorists joining ISIS in Syria as they attempted to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. Syria was supposed to be a replay of the overthrow of Gaddafi. But there is a bigger connection to the overthrow of Gaddafi and attempted overthrow of Assad than most people know. Neither of them were a threat to the United States. Both of them were fighting al-Qaeda in their own countries. Weren't we at war with al-Qaeda too? Why weren't we allied with these two leaders instead of trying to overthrow them? Why were we training, arming, and funding these al-Qaeda fighters who overthrew Gaddafi and were now trying to overthrow Assad? As I've explained in all of these articles focused on Benghazi, we were funding our enemies, but it's so much more than that. There was a much bigger plan. Why were Gaddafi and Assad specifically targeted for removal when they weren't a threat? What is the common thread that links the two leaders and made them big targets for the Obama administration? The answer to that question is connected to the excuse the Obama administration used to explain the surprise attack on the consulate in Benghazi that killed Ambassador Christopher Stevens. Do you remember the lame excuse that the Obama administration pushed for several weeks? Susan Rice made the rounds on all the Sunday news shows to push the phony narrative that the Benghazi attack was just a protest that got out of hand. She pushed the lie that an online video besmirching the Muslim religion was responsible for the protests that killed 4 Americans and seriously wounded several others. Susan Rice wasn't just Obama's ambassador to the United Nations. She was also his national security advisor. She was clearly in the loop on what was happening in Benghazi. Did she know she was pushing a complete lie in the media? But why was this specific lie so important? Why push a lie that was instantly criticized and easily proven to be false? There's a reason, and it reveals a much bigger plan in Benghazi besides the arming and funding of terrorists. Guess who first pushed the online video excuse while the attack was still in progress? According to Fox News, quote, Hillary Clinton's newly released memoir leaves little doubt she was the first member of the Obama administration to publicly link an anti-Islam video to the 2012 Benghazi terror attack, though she does not explain what intelligence she relied on to make the faulty connection. The former Secretary of State and potential Democratic presidential candidate discussed the Benghazi attack in her memoir, Hard Choices. The 33-page Benghazi chapter sheds some light on events, but it leaves plenty of inconvenient details out. According to the chronology she offers, Clinton issued the statement linking Benghazi to the video before she called President Obama on the night of the attack to provide an update, suggesting she was the originator of the flawed explanation. The State Department press release issued in her name on September 11, 2012 at 10:07 p.m. tied the death of Foreign Service Officer Sean Smith to the video, end quote. Hillary herself admits that she was the one who first pushed the online video protest excuse for the Benghazi attack. She was pushing that lie within the Obama administration before she had given Obama an update on the ongoing attack in Benghazi. This is really important to understand. Obama and Hillary, along with others, had already met to discuss the attack underway in Benghazi. Between that meeting and her first update to Obama, she began pushing the anti-Islam online video as the reason a protest in Benghazi turned violent. You really think Hillary was the only one who came up with the online video excuse? Remember, Hillary had supposedly committed a dereliction of duty by obstructing a direct order from the commander-in-chief to send help to Benghazi. Not only did Obama not punish Hillary for that obstruction in any way, Obama then sent his national security advisor out to make all the rounds in the media to push the same lie Hillary was using as the excuse for the deadly Benghazi attack. Why? Why would Obama push this lie for weeks? Clearly, it wasn't just Hillary's idea. The Obama administration was pushing hard on a narrative that Benghazi was a protest and not a terrorist attack. Was that true? Was it just a protest that got out of control? More from Fox News. Quote, later that evening, a mortar strike killed former Navy SEALs Ty Woods and Glenn Doherty, permanently maimed another CIA contractor, and severely injured diplomatic security agent David Ubben, all of whom were defending the CIA annex. U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens also died in the Benghazi assault. The accuracy of the mortar attack, 3 out of 5 rounds on target from more than half a mile away in the dark of night in under a minute, required military training and premeditation, according to multiple military and intelligence professionals, end quote. Do protesters carry mortars and heavy weapons with them? This was never a protest. It was a planned and coordinated attack, and I pointed out the reason Stevens was purposely targeted in my last article. Most people think the enemy just got a lucky shot when they killed Ty Woods and Glenn Doherty with a mortar round, which also severely injured 2 others. But it had nothing to do with luck. These Al-Qaeda terrorists had been trained by someone's military, and this was always a premeditated attack, not a protest. More from Fox News. Quote, as we work to secure our personnel and facilities, we have confirmed that 1 of our State Department officers was killed. We are heartbroken by this terrible loss, Clinton's press release said. Some have sought to justify this vicious behavior as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. In her book, Clinton makes passing reference to the September 11th press release, and the former Secretary of State offers this argument for citing the video: that violence was erupting all over the Middle East, and the obscure internet video was to blame, throwing Benghazi, without credible intelligence reporting, into the same category. The video was unquestionably inciting the region and triggering protests all over, so it would have been strange not to consider, as days of protests unfolded, that it might have had the same effect here too, Clinton wrote. That's just common sense. End quote. The Obama administration was emphasizing the term inflammatory material posted on the internet for a reason. Everyone knew immediately that this was a coordinated terrorist attack on the consulate that killed Stevens. But Hillary, along with Obama, immediately pushed the obscure internet video as the blame and purposely connected the Benghazi attack to the uprisings in the Middle East called the Arab Spring. This was purposeful. This wasn't a reactionary response in order to come up with a quick excuse for the attack. This excuse was planned ahead of time. Hillary claimed that it was just common sense to assume that there was a connection between the Benghazi attack and the Arab Spring uprisings. The Obama administration claimed they were all just protests. Except the evidence says otherwise. More from Fox News, quote, "But sources told Fox News in late September 2012 that U.S. officials knew it was terrorism within 24 hours, and U.S. personnel on the ground in Libya reported a direct assault, not a protest gone awry." Recently released documents to conservative watchdog Judicial Watch show the Obama administration continues to withhold the full contents of a media strategy discussion it had weeks after the attack. End quote. Those on the ground in Benghazi knew it was a terrorist attack immediately, and within 24 hours, the entire Obama administration knew it had nothing to do with an online video or protest. Hillary had even informed her own family members in an email that it was an attack, not a protest. But what did she tell the father of Ty Woods, who had died in the Benghazi attack? More from Fox News, quote, "In Hard Choices, Clinton described the emotional toll of meeting with the families at Andrews Air Force Base on September 14, 2012, when the bodies of 4 Americans, including Stevens, were returned to Washington." But she did not mention her comments to the father of Ty Woods. Asked about the book, Charles Woods reiterated his claim that rather than offering comforting words, Clinton told him, "We are going to have the person responsible for the video arrested," which he says he found odd given the event's tone, end quote. Even at the moment where the families were grieving their loss, Hillary was pushing the lie about the video and even told Ty Woods' father that they were going to arrest the maker of the video. Why was the Obama administration pushing so hard and lying about a protest over this particular video? Here's where most people miss the real reason that they forced that narrative throughout the media. It wasn't to hide the fact that Al-Qaeda was expanding. It was something far more sinister. And most people don't realize the real reason that this particular anti-Islam video lie was pushed so hard. Do you remember Nakula Baseli Nakula? I wouldn't be surprised if you don't know who he is, according to Fox News. Nakula, seen here with Reverend Wiley S. Drake, lives in a homeless shelter. Nakula Baseli Makula, the Coptic Christian whose short video, The Innocence of Muslims, was initially faulted for sparking the September 11, 2012 terror attack at U.S. diplomatic compounds in Libya, is now living in a homeless shelter run by First Southern Baptist Church in Buena Park, California. He has served time in prison, been shamed publicly by the White House, and threatened with death. In the aftermath of the Benghazi attack, President Obama and then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton seized on the anti-Islamist film as the cause of a spontaneous protest that turned violent. U.S. Ambassador J. Christopher Stevens, Foreign Service Information Management Officer Sean Smith, and CIA contractors Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty were killed when armed terrorists laid siege to the compound and set it ablaze, end quote. Nakula, Basili Nakula, was targeted by the Obama administration and made to be the excuse for the Benghazi attack, but they were also blaming him for the entire Arab Spring uprisings. This American citizen, who was exercising his free speech rights when he made his video, became a public target of the White House. Why? More from Fox News. Quote, Nakula's video trailer posted online and credited to Sam Basile, which sounds like imbecile, mocked the Islamic prophet Muhammad, depicting him as everything from a bozo and womanizer to predator and homosexual, although Obama and Clinton were later forced to acknowledge that the attack was organized by al-Qaeda-linked terrorists. Nakula was soon charged with 8 counts of probation violation, jailed without bail, and deemed a danger to the community. Nakula had previously been convicted of charges relating to bank and credit fraud, and federal prosecutors found his use of the internet to post the video violated the terms of his probation. End quote. He was imprisoned for probation violations, but was denied bail and deemed a danger to the community. That designation is very important. This anti-Islam video excuse became a narrative pushed by the Obama administration, and Nakula's arrest also became a big national media story. The Obama administration was making an example out of Nakula. Why? More from Fox News. Quote, it was revealed in last year's House Select Committee hearings on Benghazi that despite public proclamations otherwise, Clinton was well aware that the attacks were well crafted and not spurred by the innocence of Muslims. According to Chris Tanto Paranto, one of the CIA security contractors and survivors of the Benghazi mayhem, the first he heard of the infamous movie or even protests was about 36 hours after the attack. Quote, I was in Germany recovering and had just woken up, and I saw U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, mention it as the cause. Honestly, my first thoughts were that this was typical for this administration, spinning the truth, he told FoxNews.com. Even then, we knew that it was al-Qaeda, and this incident would crush the narrative that we had terrorism under control. Paranto stressed that innocence of Muslims played no part in Benghazi, and that the attack was well planned in advance. Quote, they knew when the ambassador was going to be there, and they knew there would be no response when they attacked, he continued. He was a high-value target that was vulnerable, and they exploited this opportunity to attack the consulate, end quote. Both Hillary and Obama knew that the lie about the protest over an online video would not hide the fact that the Benghazi attack was a terrorist attack. So why push that specific narrative so hard? While most people think it was foolish to push a lie that was so easily debunked, they are missing the real reason that this specific lie was so important. Why was it so important to push the anti-Islam video as the reason for Benghazi and then to arrest Nakula? This was the opening salvo to something that was going to become a major focus of the Obama administration. What was it? More from Fox News. Quote, Kenneth Timmerman, author of Deception, the making of the YouTube video Hillary and Obama blamed for Benghazi, asserts that Nakula was ultimately the first victim of Islamic Sharia blasphemy laws in the United States. He was collateral damage, as were the actors and actresses who became subject to death threats and fatwas, Timmerman said. Nakula takes the fatwas seriously because he understands they are still active and cannot be rescinded. End quote. Nakula was made the first victim of Islamic Sharia blasphemy laws in the United States. That goes directly against the Constitution and free speech rights. They didn't charge him for blasphemy, but as Hillary had stated, they were going to arrest him and make an example of him. They were going to find charges against him, whether he had violated his probation or not. Nakula wasn't arrested to hide the fact that Benghazi was a terrorist attack. He was arrested to usher in the next part of Obama's 16-year plan to weaken the country and destroy the Constitution. All of this was planned ahead of time. Don't believe me? Do you remember this big event that happened just months before Nakula's arrest? According to Forbes, quote, while you were out scavenging the Walmart super sales or trying on trinkets at Tiffany and Cartier, your government has been quietly wrapping up a Christmas gift of its own. Adoption of UN Resolution 16/18, an initiative of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, formerly Organization of Islamic Conferences. The Confederacy of 56 Islamic States Resolution 16/18 seeks to limit speech that is viewed as discriminatory or which involves the defamation of religion, specifically that which can be viewed as incitement to imminent violence. Initially proposed in response to alleged discrimination against Muslims in the aftermath of 9/11 and in an effort to clamp down on anti-Muslim attacks in non-Muslim countries, Resolution 16/18 has been through a number of revisions over the years in order to make it palatable to American representatives concerned about U.S. constitutional guarantees of free speech. End quote. These are the important facts to remember. UN Resolution 16/18 was an initiative being pushed by Muslim countries after 9/11 to limit free speech that was discriminatory, defamatory, or incited violence against Muslims. The U.S. Constitution guarantees free speech rights even against religion, and that was the reason this resolution had never been approved by our government until the Obama administration. Now, do you understand why Obama refused to call terrorists who killed Americans Islamic terrorists or use the term radical Islam? More from Forbes, quote, previous versions of the resolution, which sought to criminalize blasphemous speech and the defamation of religion, were regularly rejected by the American delegation and by the U.S. State Department, which insisted that limitations on speech, even speech deemed to be racist or blasphemous, were at odds with the Constitution. But this latest version, which includes the incitement to imminent violence phrase, that is, which criminalizes speech which incites violence against others on the basis of religion, race, or national origin, has succeeded in winning U.S. approval, despite the fact that it indirectly places limitations as well on speech considered to be blasphemous. End quote. This UN resolution criminalized free speech against Islam for blasphemy or defamation if it were deemed to incite imminent violence. Not one time did the Obama administration propose that the same criminality be applied to anyone who blasphemed Christianity or incited violence against Christians. Why? It wasn't just to intimidate Americans from saying anything bad about Islam or Islamic terrorists. It was just one part of a much bigger agenda. What was Obama's big agenda? It's far bigger than most people realize, and almost nobody understands the connection to Benghazi. Do you think it was just a coincidence that the Arab Spring began under Obama's presidency? Did you know that there is a common thread connected to most of the leaders who were overthrown during the Arab Spring? According to Wikipedia, quote, the Arab Spring, or the First Arab Spring, to distinguish from the Second Arab Spring, was a series of anti-government protests, uprisings, and armed rebellions that spread across much of the Arab world in the early 2010s. It began in Tunisia in response to corruption and economic stagnation. From Tunisia, the protests then spread to 5 other countries: Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, and Bahrain. Rulers were deposed: Zine El Abidine Ben Ali of Tunisia in 2011, and Muammar Gaddafi in Libya in 2011, Hosni Mubarak in Egypt in 2011, and Ali Abdullah Saleh in Yemen in 2012. Or major uprisings and social violence occurred, including riots, civil wars, or insurgencies. End quote. These were coordinated insurgencies. The Arab Spring was supposedly a spontaneous protest in several Arab countries that then led to uprisings and rebellions. If you listen to the Obama administration, they would tell you that the common thread was oppression. Obama would crow about the people rising up throughout the Middle East to demand democracy and overthrow their oppressive leaders. Obama, Hillary, and McCain all painted Gaddafi as an oppressive leader, which was why he needed to be removed. They described Assad in Syria the same way. They lumped in the leader of Tunisia, named Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, and even abandoned Hosni Mubarak, the leader of Egypt, who had been our ally since 1981. Why would Obama abandon one of our biggest allies in the Middle East? Was Hosni Mubarak an oppressive leader? This is the key to Obama's big agenda and part of the 16-year plan. Mubarak actually was a big oppressor, but who was it that he was oppressing? Have you ever heard of the Muslim Brotherhood? Pictured here, Society of the Muslim Brothers. Emblem: 2 curved swords crossed, and above those 2 swords is a book, which I'm going to assume is the Quran. And it's the Arabic word for prepare. That is the common thread among these nations involved in the Arab Spring, but nobody will tell you that. The leaders of Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, and Bahrain were standing in the way of Obama's 16-year plan. They were all oppressing the Muslim Brotherhood in their countries. The Muslim Brotherhood is a movement that seeks to establish Sharia law under a global caliphate. This Arab Spring uprising toppled many of the leaders who were oppressing the Muslim Brotherhood and preventing them from enforcing strict Sharia law. Sharia law is what is oppressive, especially to women and other religions, not to mention free speech. Obama first signed UN Resolution 16/18. Then his administration pushed the anti-Islam video as the reason for the Benghazi attack, which led to the arrest of the American citizen who made the anti-Islam video. This was a purposeful and coordinated weakening of the Constitution and promotion of Sharia law within the United States by the president himself. This was part of the 16-year plan. All of it was coordinated ahead of time. Want proof? Guess who was really behind the Arab Spring uprisings? According to the New York Times, quote, even as the United States poured billions of dollars into foreign military programs and anti-terrorism campaigns, a small core of American government-financed organizations were promoting democracy in authoritarian Arab states. But as American officials and others look back at the uprisings of the Arab Spring, they are seeing that the United States democracy-building campaigns played a bigger role in fomenting protests than was previously known, with key leaders of the movements having been trained by the Americans in campaigning, organizing through media tools, and monitoring elections. End quote. There were American government-financed organizations who were responsible for the uprisings during the Arab Spring. Key leaders of the uprisings and rebellions were actually trained by our government with taxpayers' money to campaign and organize using social media in order to overthrow these specific Arab leaders. Which government organizations were responsible? More from the New York Times, quote, a number of the groups and individuals directly involved in the revolts and reforms sweeping the region, including the April 6th youth movement in Egypt, the Bahrain Center for Human Rights, and grassroots activists like Ensar Kadi, a youth leader in Yemen, received training and financing from groups like the International Republican Institute, the National Democratic Institute, and Freedom House, a nonprofit human rights organization based in Washington, according to interviews in recent weeks and American diplomatic cables obtained by WikiLeaks. The work of these groups often provoked tensions between the United States and many Middle Eastern leaders who frequently complained that their leadership was being undermined, according to the cables. The Republican and Democratic Institutes are loosely affiliated with the Republican and Democratic parties. They were created by Congress and are financed through the National Endowment for Democracy, which was set up in 1983 to channel grants for promoting democracy in developing nations. The National Endowment receives about $100 million annually from Congress. Freedom House also gets the bulk of its money from the American government, mainly from the State Department. End quote. All of these organizations are just front groups. They pretend to promote democracy, but in reality, they are just one arm of the CIA shadow government color revolution operations. These Arab leaders who were preventing the Muslim Brotherhood from forcing Sharia law on their nations were all victims of the Obama administration's color revolution plan. The Obama administration trained and funded the groups who led the uprisings while at the same time arming the jihadists that would help overthrow these leaders. I want to focus on one of these CIA shadow government groups, the International Republican Institute. According to The Guardian, quote, I have to laugh when I see the International Republican Institute, IRI, described by the international media as an organization that promotes democracy, in this case on NPR. The IRI is in the news lately because Egypt's military government has put some of its members on a no-fly list and thereby trapped them in the country, facing investigation and possible trial, end quote. These CIA shadow government NGOs that had fomented the uprisings in these Arab countries were now under investigation in Egypt. Why? The overthrow of Mubarak led to an election that was promoted by these same NGOs that helped to elect a Muslim Brotherhood leader as president. Mohammed Morsi was elected president and then immediately placed all his Muslim Brotherhood allies into powerful positions within the government and started implementing Sharia law. The Egyptian people then rose up in protest by the millions. They didn't want to give up their freedoms, and the Morsi government was being exposed as completely corrupt. The military then stepped in and removed Morsi's government in a coup backed by the people. Once again, the Muslim Brotherhood was outlawed, and the leaders were arrested. Egypt's investigations proved that these American NGOs were behind the overthrow of their government during the Arab Spring, so they began arresting everyone involved, including members of the International Republican Institute. More from The Guardian, quote, the IRI and NDI are core grantees of the National Endowment for Democracy, an organization that conducts activities, much of which the CIA used to fund covertly, as the Washington Post reported, when the endowment was being created in the early 1980s. These organizations will sometimes support democracy, but often do not, or are even against it, end quote. The CIA shadow government always has a hidden agenda. They don't support any democracy or honor any election that puts in place a government that goes against their agenda. They will actively conduct a color revolution to topple the government and have been doing this for many decades, all while lying to the American people and pretending to be supporting democracy. Guess who was leading IRI and was partly responsible for the Arab Spring uprisings. A guy who was also at the center of the Benghazi scandal and selling weapons to our enemy. According to the Council on Hemispheric Affairs, quote, presidential hopeful John McCain is hiding a skeleton in his closet. Not your typical political scandal. Senator McCain's dirty little secret is his long-time involvement with the International Republican Institute, an organization that operates in 60 countries and is budgeted by millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars each year. The IRI is officially a politically independent entity, though in reality, it is aligned in most respects with the Republican Party and its ideals. Senator McCain has been chairman of the IRI since 1993, and Lauren Craner, president of the organization, is one of the presumptive Republican candidates' informal foreign policy advisors. End quote. John McCain was the chairman of the IRI since 1993. He had been directly involved in many color revolutions since then, including the Arab Spring. Did you know that he made a panicked trip to Egypt after the military overthrew the Muslim Brotherhood government? The interim military government in Egypt was trying to arrest members of the IRI, and some of them were hiding in the American embassy. McCain went there to try to rescue them. According to Raymond Ibrahim, writing for PJ Media, quote, in the eyes of tens of millions of Egyptians, Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham's recent words and deeds in Egypt, which have the blessing of President Obama, have unequivocally proven that U.S. leadership is aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood. Egyptian media is awash with stories of the growing anger regarding this policy, end quote. The Egyptian people were angry at McCain and the Obama administration because they had helped the Muslim Brotherhood take over their country in order to force Sharia law on them. More from Raymond Ibrahim, quote, what did McCain do and say in Egypt to earn the ire of millions of Egyptians? First, most offensive to Egyptians and helpful to the Brotherhood's cause is McCain's insistence on calling the June 30th revolution a military coup. In reality, the revolution consisted of perhaps 30 million Egyptians taking to the streets to oust the Brotherhood. McCain is either deliberately misconstruing the event or believes the story as manufactured by Al Jazeera and promulgated by Ambassador Ann Patterson. In this narrative, at least an equal amount of Egyptians supported Morsi, and the military overthrew him against popular will. Al Jazeera has actually broadcast images of the millions of anti-Morsi protesters and identified them as pro-Morsi protesters, disinformation which was quickly adopted by Western media. Several Al Jazeera correspondents have resigned due to Al Jazeera acting as the Brotherhood's international mouthpiece, end quote. This is an important point. After Morsi's government tried to force Sharia law on the people, the masses rose up and were protesting in the streets. There were millions of Egyptians protesting, and that's what drove the military to step in and remove the Morsi government. McCain referred to it as a military coup, but the truth is, Morsi was trying to change the Egyptian constitution to force Sharia law on the people, and that caused them to rise up. Had the military not removed the Muslim Brotherhood from the government, Egypt would have fallen into a bloody civil war. Don't miss this important point. Al Jazeera was using video and images of the millions of Egyptians protesting against the Morsi government and promoting the lie that those protesters were against the military coup to remove the Muslim Brotherhood. McCain was pushing the same lie while threatening the Egyptian military with a loss of U.S. funding. A lot of good journalists at Al Jazeera resigned because Al Jazeera had become the propaganda arm of the Muslim Brotherhood in the Middle East. Do you think that's just a coincidence? According to Sada El Balad English News, quote, many leaked emails related to former U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton revealed her close relationship with Qatari Al Jazeera TV network and how she had used it to spread chaos in the Middle East, according to media reports published on Saturday. Those emails were revealed after U.S. President Donald Trump recently announced the declassification of all documents related to federal investigations concerning Hillary's use of a private server for government emails. According to one of the emails, Hillary had visited Al Jazeera in May 2010 and met with the network's director back then, Wada Kanfar. She met with the channel's board of directors afterwards. They discussed and arranged a visit for a delegation from the TV network to Washington in mid-May 2010. End quote. It is no coincidence that Trump declassified these Hillary emails that were centered around the Arab Spring. He knows exactly what was happening back then and the treason that they were all trying to hide. Al Jazeera was the dominant television channel in the Middle East, and it is based in Qatar. The CIA had been directly tied to the government in Qatar for many years, and that's why the government was helping to facilitate the weapons deals to arm al-Qaeda in Libya and ISIS in Syria. But there was another big reason that Hillary was making deals with Qatar. More from C News, quote, in another email, Hillary requested Qatar to finance the so-called Arab Spring Revolution through a fund dedicated to the Clinton Foundation, end quote. Everything is about money. Hillary was using Qatar to funnel money through the Clinton Foundation in order to fund the Arab Spring, just like McCain was funding the Arab Spring through the International Republican Institute. The Obama administration, with the help of McCain, was doing everything it could to help the Muslim Brotherhood bring their global caliphate to reality. Trump knows all about this plan.
There is also a movement afoot to get the Muslim Brotherhood designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Such a move would carry with it some major implications for America's relationships in the Middle East. Here is senior correspondent Eric Shawn.
The Muslim Brotherhood is banned in 5 Muslim countries, classified as a terrorist group. Founded in Egypt in 1928, its goal is for society to be ruled by Islamic law. Fox News has learned the Trump administration is considering banning it here too and designating it as a foreign terrorist organization known as an FTO. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer was asked if President Trump will make the designation.
I'm not going to get ahead of any announcements that we may or may not have coming in the near future, but make no mistake, the president understands the threat that our nation faces, and he's doing everything he can to attack it, root it out, and destroy it.
I firmly believe that it does threaten national security interests.
Florida Republican Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart and Texas Senator Ted Cruz have parallel bills calling on Secretary of State Rex Tillerson to consider if the Muslim Brotherhood should be added to the terrorist list. At his confirmation hearing, Tillerson called the Muslim Brotherhood, quote, agents of radical Islam. Experts say it has U.S. followers, and its ideology has spawned terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and Hamas. But the group claims it renounced violence decades ago.
You have leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood who are designated terrorists. You have organizations under the Muslim Brotherhood like Hamas who are designated as terrorist organizations. So I think it's pretty much a no-brainer that this is a terrorist organization.
But some are wary of labeling the group as terrorists. Robert Polito specializes in constitutional law at Seton Hall University and says the group does not qualify as a terrorist organization under U.S. law.
I think designating the Muslim Brotherhood as an FTO is bad in legal terms. I think it's bad in terms of diplomacy. I think it's bad in terms of civil liberties, and it's bad in terms of our constitutional tradition. And it could have a devastating effect on Muslim American communities in the United States.
Designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist group has been tried before. Last year, Congress considered a similar bill that was co-sponsored by now CIA Director Mike Pompeo, but it was not voted on by the House. James.
Eric, thank you.
There were definitely Muslim Brotherhood followers in the United States. Many of them were occupying key positions within the Obama administration, which was pushing for Sharia law. Hillary was planning on doing the same had she been elected. According to the Center for Security Policy, quote, unfortunately, Mrs. Clinton has all too often been an enthusiastic supporter of those like Muslim Public Affairs Council President Salam al-Marayati as they seek to dominate their fellow Muslims, notably in places like Egypt, Libya, and Syria, and subvert the United States and the rest of the free world with what the brothers call civilization jihad. Have you ever heard of civilization jihad? According to Breitbart, quote, violent jihad dominates the attention of those responsible for national security. But the more dangerous long-term threat the Center for Security Policy's Team B report found is what the Muslim Brotherhood calls civilization jihad. This pre-violent form of jihad, according to the totalitarian ideology of Sharia, is considered an integral, even dominant element of jihad. Such tactics are ostensibly nonviolent and therefore moderate, not because the Muslim Brotherhood eschews violence out of principle, but because it has decided that this phase of battlefield preparation is better accomplished through stealthy means. Hence, civilization jihad can be considered stealth jihad. Civilization jihad is a form of political and psychological warfare that includes multi-layered cultural subversion, the co-opting of senior leaders, influence operations, propaganda, and other means of insinuating Sharia gradually into Western societies. End quote. Are you seeing the complete picture? Political and psychological warfare were being waged from within our government and culture in order to weaken the Constitution and replace it with Sharia law. Q kept telling us, infiltration, not invasion. The violent and deadly terrorist attacks are grabbing all the media attention on purpose. The media helps to drive the fear narrative, which allows the government to strip away our constitutional rights on the basis of national security. Our privacy rights have been stripped away, and now our free speech rights were being removed as well. Our own CIA shadow government were funding, training, and supplying these terrorist groups with weapons in order to launder taxpayers' money and create fear in the population to go along with these changes to our Constitution. But while the violent attacks were getting all the attention, a civilization/stealth jihad was happening under the radar within our government in order to change our Constitution and institute Sharia law. More from Breitbart. Quote, the explanatory memorandum explains that the Muslim Brotherhood organized Islamic movement in the U.S. is a settlement process to establish itself in the United States and, once entrenched, to undertake a grand jihad characterized as a civilization jihadist mission under Muslim Brotherhood direction, absent an appreciation of the threat posed by stealth jihad. The pre-violent civilization jihadist is free to proceed unimpeded under the radar in Western societies, infiltrating and subverting along lines specifically tailored to today's liberal, multicultural-minded, non-Muslim populations. It does so in ways that are genuinely difficult to recognize, oppose, or counter. End quote. The Muslim Brotherhood's mission was to establish itself in America and entrench itself within our government. This was a far more dangerous long-term threat than fighting terrorism. Infiltration, not invasion. But there were heroes who recognized the threat at the time. Here are two pictures from an important Q drop. Q drop number 1236 of April 22nd, 2018. Pictured here, Salon, Michelle Bachmann, pictured here, crossing her fingers. Bachmann defends her witch hunt. The Minnesota representative offers evidence, in quotes, of Islamic infiltration of the U.S. government in a 16-page letter. From Salon, quote, Representative Michelle Bachmann defended her attempt to root out deep penetration by the Muslim Brotherhood into the U.S. government Friday, writing a 16-page letter explaining and expanding on her initial charges against Huma Abedin and others of being terrorist sympathizers. Bachmann's letter came in response to a challenge from a fellow Minnesota lawmaker, Representative Keith Ellison, a Democrat who was the first Muslim elected to Congress. Ellison last week asked Bachmann for evidence to support a series of letters the Republicans sent to 5 national security agencies demanding investigations into alleged Muslim Brotherhood infiltration in their ranks. End quote. Do you remember Michelle Bachmann? She was a member of Congress from Minnesota, and she was publicly demanding that the 5 national security agencies investigate the infiltration of our government by the Muslim Brotherhood. She specifically named Hillary Clinton's closest aide, Huma Abedin. Why? According to Salon, quote, in the new letter, Bachmann questions why Abedin, top aide to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and the wife of former Representative Anthony Weiner, was able to receive a security clearance despite having family members that Bachmann believes are connected to the Brotherhood. Quote, I am particularly interested in exactly how, given what we know from the international media about Ms. Abedin's documented family connections with the extremist Muslim Brotherhood, she was able to avoid being disqualified for a security clearance, the Congresswoman wrote. End quote. Huma Abedin's entire family had a long history of direct ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. Why didn't that disqualify her from receiving a security clearance? Why was she allowed to serve as the second most powerful person at the State Department? Infiltration, not invasion. The Obama administration was helping the Muslim Brotherhood spread their global caliphate throughout the Middle East with the Arab Spring uprisings and the arming of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. They were also pushing for the adoption of Sharia law within the United States. Hillary was playing a big role, and Huma Abedin was at her right hand through it all. Michelle Bachmann was sounding the alarm back in 2012. But guess who quickly came to Huma's defense?
Over the past decade, I've had the pleasure of knowing her during her long and dedicated service to Hillary Rodham Clinton, both in the United States Senate and now in the Department of State. I know Huma to be an intelligent, upstanding, hardworking, and loyal servant of our country and our government, who has devoted countless days of her life to advancing the ideals of the nation she loves and looking after its most precious interests. That she has done so while maintaining her characteristic decency, warmth, and good humor is a testament to her ability to bear even the most arduous duties with poise and confidence. Put simply, Huma Abedin represents what is best about America, the daughter of immigrants, who has risen to the highest levels of our government on the basis of her substantial personal merit and her abiding commitment to the American ideals that she embodies. I am proud to know her, and I am proud, even maybe with some presumption, to call her my friend. Recently, it has been alleged that Huma Abedin, a Muslim American, is part of a nefarious conspiracy to harm the United States by unduly influencing U.S. foreign policy at the Department of State in favor of the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamist causes. On June 13th, 5 members of Congress wrote to the Deputy Inspector General of the Department of State demanding that he begin an investigation into the possibility that Huma Abedin and other American officials are using their influence to promote the cause of Muslim Brotherhood within the U.S. government. The information offered to support these serious allegations is based on a report, quote, The Muslim Brotherhood in America, which is produced by the Center for Security Policy. And I'd like to point out, I have worked with the Center for Security Policy. Its friend ahead of it is a longtime friend of mine. But still, this report is scurrilous. To say that the accusations made in both documents are not substantiated by the evidence they offer is to be overly polite and diplomatic about it. It is far better and more accurate to talk straight. These allegations about Huma Abedin and the report from which they are drawn are nothing less than an unwarranted and unfounded attack on an honorable citizen, a dedicated American, and a loyal public servant.
Leave it to No Name to defend the enemy from within. He's the worst kind of traitor. Q mentioned him specifically in a portion of this Q drop. Q drop number 58 of November 2nd, 2017. Quote, Senator McCain and others roundly criticized Representative Michelle Bachmann in 2012 when she and 4 members of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Judiciary Committee cited Ms. Abedin in letters sent to the Inspectors General of the Department of Defense, Department of State, Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, warning about Muslim Brotherhood infiltration of the United States government. Why is this relevant? Who took an undisclosed trip to SA? What was the purpose of a F2FV phone call, Alice in Wonderland? End quote. Bachmann had publicly called out the Muslim Brotherhood infiltration of our government, so McCain quickly went to her defense. All assets were being deployed. Here's Q drop number 1360 of May 13th, 2018. Pictured here, Kerry talking to Assad. Pictured here, Pelosi talking to Assad. Full circle, link from the Hill. Huma Abedin ties to the Muslim Brotherhood from Scribd. Bachmann letter responding to Ellison. It's all connected. Welcome back, Huma. Now comes the pain. Q. Nancy Pelosi and John Kerry had met with Bashar al-Assad, whom the Obama administration was trying to overthrow by arming ISIS. The Muslim Brotherhood was helping the CIA smuggle shoulder-fired missiles into Syria with the help of Turkey. Q is tying all of that to Huma Abedin and her direct connections to the Muslim Brotherhood, who took an undisclosed trip to SA. What was the purpose of a face-to-face versus a phone call? F2F versus phone call. And what big event happened just 3 days after this Q drop? It's all connected. In my next article, I'll go deeper into Huma Abedin to reveal her important role in this treasonous conspiracy and focus on the Muslim Brotherhood's infiltration of our government. And that's the article, guys. In typical Joe Lange fashion, he just kind of gets tired and says, all right, I'm going to write more some other time. Still, brilliant article, magnificent work, Joe Lange, incredible research. It's one of the best out there right now. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Guys, don't forget, tulipblooms.shop, Epic Moisture Creamy Body Butter, the Rainfall, amazing lotion with all the food-grade plant oils. Food grade, food grade, food grade. Ah, my gorgeous Epic Moisture Creamy Body Butter. My forehead has never looked so smooth. And now, because it's Black Friday, buy one, get one half off on absolutely everything. The same goes for epicminerals.net. Take care of your health, detox from heavy metals, and the Wellness Extra Capsules. Buy one, get one half off at epicminerals.net as well. Promo code Shapiro for an extra 10% off. My Shapiro promo code using friends. Thank you so much. Let us pray. Saint Michael, the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you tomorrow.